Welcome back to the final hour of the Hold Their Feet to the Fire event here in Washington, D.C. at the Phoenix Park Hotel. I'm Gary Sutton on News Radio 910 WSBA, and glad to be with you this morning. And we would like to tell you, in the interest of openness and transparency, that we are broadcasting live today from FAIR's Hold Their Feet to the Fire event, and they are covering our travel and our, when I say our travel, our rooms, and also our broadcast costs for the broadcast. However, we do choose all of our own guests, and one of those guests coming up next is a guy who you've probably seen on Nightline, NewsHour, CNN, Fox, 60 Minutes. He has a regular blog on National Review. He is the head of a well-respected and often cited CIS, which is known as the Center for Immigration Studies. It's an independent, nonpartisan, nonprofit research organization founded in 1985, and we're talking about Mark Krikorian, who's their executive director. Mark, great to have you on the show this morning.
Glad to be here.
Mark, you're a guy who looks at this a little bit differently, I think, than a lot of people. You look at it through real numbers, and one of the things when we talk about illegal immigration and immigration policy in this country, I think too many people get caught up in the emotion of it. I think yours comes back more to, okay, let's take a look at the facts on the table here, right?
Right. I mean, that's kind of our point here. We're, unlike, say, FAIR or Numbers USA that are more directly involved in, like, grassroots stuff, or in actually, talking to congressmen's offices trying to get them to vote yes or no on vote, Bill ABC or something like that. We are like a step back from that. And what we do is, research and publication. My research director is a PhD number cruncher guy. And I've got people who are experienced in law enforcement and other areas. So yeah, I mean, this is what we try to do, is put out facts. We have a point of view. We're not hiding that. But the whole point is, this is what immigration is doing. This is what it's about. We now have to decide, is this something you like or don't you?
And as you put out the facts, obviously there are facts that come up that would support somehow illegal immigration or something online. You'd be willing to put that out there too, right?
Well, look, yeah, I mean, just like any government policy, there are winners and losers. The question is, how do you decide on balance? Is it more important that farmers, for instance, or construction companies are able to keep their wages down? Is that more important? Or is it more important that less skilled American workers have a better chance at raising their wages? And, you can make an argument either way. I'm pretty clearly where my sympathies lie, right. But, you can make an argument either way.
Let's talk about the numbers, though. And for a lot of people that are sitting out there listening to this today on my show, a lot of people are saying, well, geez, has it really depressed wages over the years? Has illegal immigration coming into the country, people working for menial wages, has that really hurt the American wage? Talk a little bit about that, what the numbers tell us.
It's not really that illegal immigration, because it's illegal, has an effect. The reason immigration, illegal or legal, has an effect in the labor market is mainly because it's adding huge numbers of people especially to the low-skilled labor market. Most illegal immigration is even more low-skilled than legal immigration. Most of them do not have high school diplomas. The majority do not, and that's, no surprise. But what that means is they're competing with a relatively small percentage of American workers, but it's a very large number. Maybe 10% of American workforce doesn't have a high school diploma. But frankly, the jobs you're really looking at now are not just jobs that high school dropouts hold, but also those with only high school. And that's actually a much larger share of the workforce. And the idea that illegal immigrants don't compete with Americans, this is the thing that the open borders people say. Look, they're doing different jobs. That's not true. Only in picking fresh fruits and vegetables, maybe can you make that argument, and I'm happy to talk about that too. But in everything else, in retail and services, in construction, what have you, they're competing directly with less skilled Americans and young Americans. See, this is what we found. We did a study on summer jobs.
Right.
And the percentage of American teenagers who work in the summer has been going down everywhere. I mean, this is a broader social problem that I think is unhealthy.
Okay.
But in states where immigration is heaviest, the drop in American teenagers working is like a rock, as opposed to everywhere else where it's dropping, but not nearly as fast. So this is actually an issue not of wage competition, but of Americans actually being elbowed out of the labor market altogether. Both things happen.
We're talking with Mark Krikorian, Executive Director for the Center for Immigration Studies. To that conversation then, we hear the cliches all the time, and people say, well, these people are doing jobs Americans don't want to do. And that is one of the arguments you hear made all the time, I will say ad nauseum. Your response to that?
Yeah, it's complete baloney. We looked at the Census Bureau numbers on this. The Census Bureau divides all the jobs in the country up, groups them into about 400-something different categories. Okay. And we found, I think, 4, last time we looked, categories, small categories, where more than half of the workers were foreign-born. Not illegal, but any kind of immigrant. And even those, it was just a little more than half.
Right.
They were, I forget what, I think, off the top of my head, I don't remember what they were. A couple of them were ag-related. But let's say, think of some other job category, janitors. People imagine, well, janitors, that's a job Americans won't do. 75% of janitors are U.S.-born people. You can't say that the 75% of the people doing a job are Americans, but that's a job Americans won't do. Heck, you can't even say that 50% of the people doing a particular job are Americans, and therefore that's a job Americans won't do. There's no such thing. There just isn't.
So, and people would say, okay, so what do we do then? We've seen a big influx, for example, into the construction business over the years of people who have come to this country illegally. Of course, when construction went down, we saw a lot of these people heading back across the border and saying, job's not here anymore. So we're seeing those kind of numbers out there, too, are we not?
Yeah, to some degree, at least at the beginning of the recession.
Right.
Because what we saw is that in 2007, after, it was interestingly, both when the Senate amnesty bill collapsed in the Senate, and shortly afterwards the economy tanked. But what it looks like is that the drop in the illegal population started before the recession started, and then it was accelerated by the recession. So we went from about 12.5 million illegal aliens in 2007 down to probably 11 million a year and a half, 2 years later. Now, that's a big drop, but that's still 11 million illegal aliens. I mean, now it proves the point that illegal immigrants will go home if there's, something to impel them to go home. The problem is it's now started to creep back up because new jobs are overwhelmingly going to immigrants rather than to natives. Now, this isn't to say Americans aren't getting work. Obviously they are. But when you look at all of it together, add it all up, do an average, the job growth, net job growth, is almost entirely going to immigrants rather than to Americans.
We have seen industries over the years, and I've seen some of the numbers on them from time to time, and I can't cite exactly what they are now, but I'll give you a ballpark figure, and you probably already know it. Meat packing industry, for example, used to be a business where you could make $20 an hour to start. Today, it's down about half of that. And again, a lot of people point to, okay, why is that? And a lot of people would say illegal immigration has at least been a major part of that problem. Do you see it that way?
Yeah, there's no question about it. I mean, meat packing is an interesting example. What the meat processing companies used to do the processing in the cities. Chicago, for instance, they called it the butcher shop of the world or whatever. There was some word like that. So what the meat packing companies did is that, look, we can cut our costs by moving to the sources of the cattle out into smaller towns in Iowa and Nebraska and elsewhere. And they were cutting costs. And all other things being equal, if that worked for them, whatever, that's fine.
Have at it.
Yeah. The problem is they found they didn't have enough people, obviously, because it's a smaller town. There's not that many people. It's, dirty, hard work. And so you need, people who are unemployed and want to take the job. So they ended up busing illegal labor in. And what that's done is enabled them to avoid doing the other things like raising wages, better benefits, say organizing shuttle buses from nearby towns so they could have more, people would be able to get there if they didn't have a car, stuff like that. Instead, they just got this supply of illegal workers coming in to do the job.
And thus undercut a wage in the country. Right. And I guess also didn't have to worry about unions that way either.
Exactly.
Right?
It was a big way. It's a union busting strategy.
Now, what are some of the other areas where we've seen some major decreases in terms of salaries, wages, et cetera?
Well, you see it in, you really do see it with regard to young people. This is one area that really struck us. When we did our report on summer jobs, you have, actually, this is not even an illegal issue. This is a legal issue where the State Department runs this summer jobs program for foreign college students where there's no numerical limit on it. And, we had on the panel discussion we did about this, we had a company in the Northern Virginia, in the Washington suburban area, that supplies American teenagers as lifeguards to swimming pools.
Okay.
Because here you have pool clubs, they're only open 3 or 4 months of the year, the swimming pool, that kind of thing. You need lifeguards. They're having real trouble placing their American kids because, they got to go back to school, and, when school is over. And instead, they're saying, no, let's import these Romanian teenagers who are more than happy to do it. They'll do it for peanuts. They're really only doing it to earn a little money so they can then go and travel around and go to Disneyland. And this is making it additionally difficult for American teenagers to get these jobs. And again, this is lifeguards. This isn't a job Americans won't do. This isn't picking tomatoes in the hot sun. This is getting a tan and maybe once the 3 months you're there jumping into the water to pull a kid out. And so it's remarkable how both illegal immigration and all of the many legal programs that we've cooked up make it hard for people starting out in the labor market, whether they're teenagers, whether they're high school dropouts. They could be ex-cons, recovering drug addicts, anybody that employers are going to sort of say, well, I don't know if I want to take a chance on this person. Anybody like that is harmed by high levels of legal or illegal immigration.
It was always interesting to me when I went down to the shore in the summer. I go down to places like Cape May, New Jersey, and places like that. A lot of Irish-speaking people down there, and I'm Scots-Irish by background, but they would show for the summer and they go back for the winter, and it was a place, once again. So when we talk about immigration, we're not talking about just from the South. We're talking about from all over the world.
Asia, Europe, every place. In fact, because of the relative somewhat slowdown in illegal crossings from Mexico, probably like last year's total immigration, in other words, the total number of new people who moved to the United States last year, probably there were more people from Asia than Latin America for one of the first times ever, at least in the past 50 years.
So when we have, for example, like these guest worker type visas that you come into, and of course we know most people who come here illegally come through visas, overstay them, and then just stick around. Are they a good idea? I mean, is there a type that are a good idea? What are your thoughts about all that?
I mean, I think the whole idea of a temporary worker program is a mistake. There's nothing as permanent as a temporary worker. You're taking in people, and they're essentially indentured servants.
Yes.
Now, it's one thing to say, well, you're going to be a professor and teach for 1 year at a university. Who cares? First, I mean, you're an educated person. It's an organized thing in a reputable institution.
Maybe a visiting professor.
Yeah, that's not even really. It's kind of the same category. But when you're talking, especially about less skilled people, farm workers, or not even just farm workers, all kinds of other jobs now we have guest worker programs for. There's no excuse for any of that. Because look, if you're a business, you're going to always want more people fighting over the job that you have.
Absolutely.
But Congress has no responsibility to help you do that.
When in your studies, and we have about a minute to go in this segment, we're going to have 5 more with you after that, but in your studies, when did this shift in paradigm come where we said, well, okay, we don't really want those jobs, which seems to me like a rationalization for, okay, these other people are taking them right now, therefore we have to come up with an argument as to why it's okay.
Yeah, if I had to pin a date, I would say the 1670s, when we first imported slaves to pick rice and indigo in the South.
And started as indentured servants and became slaves,
This is, our first failed foreign worker program. We had to fight a civil war to end. This is a part almost kind of in our DNA to have both of these impulses, both the egalitarian common man high wage impulse and at the same time this sort of controlled workers, push wages down, rich versus poor kind of impulse. Yeah. Both things are there. We need to always strengthen one and push against the other.
We're talking to Mark Krikorian, the Executive Director of the Center for Immigration Studies. He's going to be back, and when we come back, I'm going to ask him about the age-old question, what do we do now with the 12 to 16 million who are here? No one seems to have come up with an answer yet. We're going to hit Mark with that when we come back and see what he has to say here on the Gary Sutton Show, live from the Phoenix Park Hotel in Washington, D.C., on News Radio 910 WSBA. Welcome back to the Gary Sutton Show on WSBA, live from the Phoenix Park Hotel here in Washington, D.C., in our final hour of the Hold Their Feet to the Fire event held by FAIR, the Federation for American Immigration Reform. We're with Mark Krikorian, who is the executive director of the Center for Immigration Studies. I'll spit that out eventually, Mark. But, you know, one of the things you hear a lot in this whole debate about immigration in the country is, you know, there's 20, there's 30, there's 40 million illegal immigrants here, there's 10, there's 12, there's 16. You've done a lot of research on this. What numbers do you come up with, and how do you arrive at them?
Usually our estimate now is 11 to 12. Could be 13 maybe. It can't be 20 to 30 million. It's literally not possible. And the reason is not because I take the Homeland Security's department's word for it or anything. The reason there can't be 20 or 30 million illegal aliens is because you would see it in the death records and the birth records. We're a modern country. Nobody's born or dies here without it being recorded somewhere. And we have a pretty good system, death certificates, birth certificates, and all that. If there were that many more illegal, twice as many as the estimates are, you would see more people being born, more people dying in the numbers, and it's not there. There's literally no way that it can be 20 or 30. It could be 13, maybe 14, I don't know, although it could be 10 if you go that way.
Sure.
But something like 11 or 12 is probably correct.
When you hear the arguments, and I'm sure you've heard all of the cliches and arguments there are to hear, one of the ones that comes up, and it's a definite concern because we want to know what policy would work in this country. What do we do with that bottom line 10, maybe top line, let's be really liberal, 14? What do we do with those people that are here in the country illegally right now, if anything?
I wrote a long piece on this for National Review, and they put it online too, so it's there. I write for NR a lot. Right. And the way I laid the strategy out is, look, first there has to be implemented the enforcement systems to make sure this doesn't happen again. And the other side says, well, you keep saying that, and we keep doing things, and you move the goalposts. Every time we do some enforcement thing, you ask for another one. No, sorry. The enforcement systems we need have been either required by Congress or demanded by people for decades now. Mm-hmm. And some of them, there's been some progress. For instance, visa tracking. Almost half illegal aliens came in legally, like you mentioned before, on visas, and then we didn't know they left. If you don't know who left, you don't know who's still here. Our system to do that is a little better than it used to be. It was unbelievably Mickey Mouse in the past. It's a little less Mickey Mouse now. It's still not fully in place. Those are the kinds of things that have to be in place first. Working, functioning, overcome the ACLU lawsuits, which were inevitable to stop them. Then I'm kind of a squish on this. I mean, I'm willing to talk about amnesty for some share. You know, people have been here a long time. They've had kids born here. They're not dope dealers, that kind of thing. Let's say half the illegal aliens would get an amnesty that way. Mm-hmm. In exchange, though, there has to be a deal, and the deal is not the past deal from 1986, where we promise future enforcement in exchange for an amnesty.
Simpson-Mazzoli Act.
Yeah, the enforcement has to happen first. They're going to have to take our word for it. That the deal then is, after that, amnesty in exchange for cuts in legal immigration going forward. Cut legal immigration roughly in half so that it's focused on husbands, wives, and little kids of U.S. citizens. Everybody agrees on that. Mm-hmm. But that's a lot of immigration, 350, 400,000 people. A handful of real Einsteins, top people in the world, not just sort of an average guy who can write computer code, and some number of real refugees who really have nowhere else to go at all. You add that together, it's something like half what we take now, maybe 500,000 people a year. But the point is, the deal for amnesty has to be amnesty in exchange for those kind of cuts, and only after enforcement is fully in place.
Interesting stuff. And Mark, I appreciate you being with us this morning. Really good insights. A final word for people out there that are really dealing with this issue right now.
Eternal vigilance. The people in Congress want an amnesty, including a lot of the Republicans.
Yes, they do.
And only by keeping the lights on and the focus on can you scare them away from doing that.
And again, I think the idea that we can talk about it as you did this without all the emotion in it, but talk about it from the standpoint of what's good for the overall country, what is best for overall America is really what it's all about.
Absolutely. I mean, that's what we send people to Congress to talk about.
Mark, thank you so much for joining us this morning. Mark Krikorian, the Executive Director for the Center for Immigration Studies. We're going to take a break. When we come back, we close the show, as we do every year, with Michael Harrison, who is the head of Talkers Magazine. He's the editor, and he'll be with us here on the Gary Sutton Show. We had a short time with him yesterday to start the whole thing. We now end with a much longer time today as we talk about the power of talk radio and what that is here on News Radio 910 WSBA, where it's the bottom of the hour.